Hello, welcome to another video. Today I am simply answering a question that came in through my website's contact form, which has not been forwarding me messages to my email like it's supposed to. So apologies if I still haven't gotten back with you and you've used that to try to contact me. Um, so this is a question that I was thinking about just a couple days ago. So I'm glad this guy asked it in this way. And you might have the same question too. If you have been following me for a while or even recently and are wondering what the astrology stuff is really about. If you found me recently, you probably came to me through astrology. If you've been following me for over 3 years, say it's probably more about philosophy and maybe even other personality systems, or maybe you just like to laugh in my face. I don't care. All right. But if you're wondering what the astrology stuff is about and what it is that I actually offer, what you can expect from a reading from me, part of that is kind of the philosophy of astrology is involved in that. And I have other videos on that topic and will continue to make other videos on that topic because that's something that is really of interest to a lot of people right now because our society is kind of in a time of crisis, and astrology is one of those cult subjects and arts as well that tend to resurface or have a resurgence in times of crisis because people are really reaching out for answers. And astrology gives us tons of archetypal symbolism for understanding ourselves and the world, and it's extremely useful. It's not a belief system, and it's not even really a method because there are so many different methods within it. But it's more of a language that we come to learn. It's a non-linear language. It has beauty to it, it has symmetry to it, and it has symbolism. So arguably more direct forms of knowledge than words alone. Okay. So anyway, that's just a tangent on the philosophy of astrology, but it's an important question to consider and one that's of interest to me as well. So anyway, this guy asks, "Hey man, I love your YouTube channel. Thank you. I'd like to know what I can expect from a birth chart reading from you, how much it costs and the format of the reading, video or text, etc. I've been getting into astrology lately and your channel has definitely contributed to that. Please get back to me. Thanks." Very common concern. Okay. I talked about the resurgence just now. This is not the first person to come to me either for a reading or information about a reading who's just asked, "Hey, what do I expect? I'm just getting into this astrology thing. What's it all about?" So what's it all about? See some of my other videos on the nature of astrology. But this is how I replied. They said, "Thanks for the feedback. I'm glad you're finding my content useful and interesting. What you can expect from a reading from me on one hand depends on what you want to get out of it, whether that be to learn general information about your own chart, guidance on a particular area of life, such as career, relationships, business opportunity, something like that, or about how to read any birth chart in general, so to learn how to do astrology. I can tailor a reading to suit any of those goals." Okay, that's on one hand. On the other hand, my aim with any reading is to provide you with a technical understanding of the mechanisms of your perceptual predispositions. In other words, the birth chart shows us how we're inclined to see different aspects of reality through our own perception, through archetypes, by using archetypes and symbolism that have ancient roots to them. Okay. And that can be extremely useful and allow us to formulate principles, set proper boundaries, and squeeze the most out of our potential. And those three things that I just listed are three key things you might want to keep in mind if you're asking this question. I guess you are if you've made it this far in the video, or you're still laughing at my face. That's fine. Saturn issues are really my specialty. I'm a very Saturnian person, if you know what that means, and I have a very Saturnian chart. So I'm kind of uniquely specialized to deal with Saturn issues, and those deal with with formulating principles for you to live by. And this is where my philosophical background comes in very handy, is setting principles that give you a way of living, rules for living that accord with your uniqueness, but also with objective reality as it is. So they're principles that are good for you to live in the world in a true and good way. That's good for you and for everyone. Okay. Principles are really our moral foundation. We have to have principles that we live by, and the truer they are, the better of a life we live. Okay, all things considered. Maybe not always materially, but if you live in accordance with materialism, that doesn't have sustainability to it. Matter breaks down, but things metaphysical in nature persist through time. There are patterns through time. So astrology gives us insight on a lot of those patterns. Okay, and patterns uniquely suited to the way that you see objective patterns. That's what your birth chart represents on one hand, okay? Setting proper boundaries, another Saturnian matter, okay? Being able to say no to things, or yes, if you're more inclined to say no more often than not. Some people have to learn how to say yes. Many people, maybe more people, I would imagine, have to learn how to say no. That's part of their journey, So we're all like a little bit more of one than the other, at least. And so we set proper boundaries on the basis of our principles. You can't have one of these things without the other. You can't have boundaries without principles, and you can't justifiably say no or yes to something without having preset boundaries. And I've done another video, at least one other video, describing the difference between principles and boundaries. Principles are, you can check that out, try to find it. In a nutshell, principles are about moral grounding that are objective, but include the subjective. Okay, boundaries are our behavioral adaptations to our principles and the world as it is. Okay, the more conscious it is, the more firm your principles are. The more, shoot from the hip you are about your boundaries, the less logical coherence you have tying them together, the more maybe whimsical you are. Okay, and the less conscious of a path you're on. So I want to make you more conscious of your own perceptual processes. It's part of it. I have a few regular clients who I consult with one-on-one on a weekly basis who aren't really interested in learning how to read charts and do astrology in general, but who would just rather have someone to talk to who already has that knowledge. Okay. So I'm just giving you that's one example of a form that a reading or a series of readings can take. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. So a written report is more labor intensive. I try to reserve that to more cut and dry birth chart information, such as compatibility between two people's birth charts for business relationships, etc., marriages, and also child reports I do as written, because the information in the birth chart is kind of just there, and having that knowledge about your innate proclivities or your child's innate proclivities can make parenting a lot smoother. You don't have to learn all of those lessons about how to deal with this child differently from that child the hard way if you already know what their communication and social and discipline styles are like. Okay. And then, of course, environmental factors, play into how the child's innate predispositions actually manifest and are actually expressed, because your conditioning and your environment provides you with context for the real you to be expressed. Does that make sense? So a labor report is, I'm sorry, a written report is pretty labor intensive. So I try to reserve that for certain kinds of reports, right? So a birth chart reading for someone who already has experienced things in life, not an infant, I usually prefer an audio recording or a one-on-one session to make it worth my time, uh, depending on what your preferences are. In an audio recording, I would basically just be describing the most important parts of your chart for 45 minutes or so, depending on how your chart reads and your pre-existing level of knowledge in astrology. I get more into aspects and nodal, uh, pieces to the chart for the more advanced knowledge people. If I tell you, find me your Pisces Venus in the third house, if you can point that to that directly, then you already have some knowledge of astrology, and you can probably go for the advanced reading because those are two different price points. Um, in a one-on-one session, we can keep it more open and attack what seems most relevant in the present moment because we're having a dialogue. And while you say things and I'm listening to you, certain parts of your birth chart light up. And then I'm like, oh, all right, let's talk about this. That's where what you just said is rooted. Okay. So we can keep it more open and moment relative or relevant, and learn technical stuff as we go along. All right, but it's not focused on that. It's going to be more technical if I write. I'm going to flesh out more technical detail. It might seem boring to you if you're not trying to be an astrologer, so it depends what you prefer. And you can view my price list at overthoughtandunderstated.com /astrology, and visit my website for the other services that I offer too, in addition to astrology. I also teach philosophy and logic. I can tutor, I can revise and proofread essays. I can either write things for you, or edit a book that you're writing on the nature of the universe. Who knows? I can do pretty much anything. So hit me up, and I hope you enjoyed this video and that it was helpful, especially if you were already wondering this. So y'all have a good weekend. Cheers.